guests, but I'd be okay with getting the ball roll. Yep. All right. I like it. Good call. All right. It's all you, Brad.
Okay, cool. So we started recording. Tonight's conversation is on the subject of identity, which can go a whole bunch of different places. We'll probably won't go through the intro again. We've done the intro a bunch of times, and hopefully everybody knows who everybody is by now. I'm not sure who else is getting on the call. Hopefully it's some fresh new faces, maybe some people none of us know. That would be awesome. Also cool if it's people we do know, but we're just going to get this thing rolling. We're going to shoot for about an hour, hour and a half, just because anything past that's a ton of extra stuff to edit, upload, and most people probably won't watch more than like 2.5 hours. So we'll keep it something manageable, something digestible, and there'll still be nuggets of gold the whole way through, I'm sure. But tonight's conversation is on the subject of identity, and we kind of had a little pre-conversation here earlier before we started recording about it, and I don't know, Bill, if you wouldn't mind kind of hitting that again for everybody, because I think you said some awesome things there, and that's one path we kind of want to go with this.
Oh, sure. I'm ready for my close-up. So thanks for letting me practice. I never say the same thing again after, mentioning using the words. So talking about identity, and what I was saying was that, this struck a nerve with me because there is such a huge part of our identity is surrounded, with the EOD badge and, and our service and all that we've done. And when you retire, and I retired, oh God, 12, 13 years ago. And at the time, I was really ready to retire. I had the corporate Air Force had really started getting on my nerves. And I could tell that the magic was gone in that relationship. I loved being a bomb tech. I loved being the shop chief there at Inserlick, and it remains probably the best job ever. And transitioning out, it definitely impacts your identity. And when I took a new job at Pacific Northwest National Labs here in Washington State, I went from being the old man where like I said, youngsters like Mario and some of the guys that worked for me, Ryan Hoagland and some of the others there at Inserlick. Ryan is about the same age as my oldest son, so that really made me feel old. And then you start getting grief I'm a 40-year-old guy at the time that I'm being told that I'm going to break my hip, and they're calling me grandpa and all that stuff. And then I moved to the National Labs where it's kind of like drinking from that fountain of youth. All of a sudden I was young again, and that was amazing, that piece. But now I go from being the old experienced guy to the noob, and having to learn all that again, and then dealing the interpersonal relations within my new work group. I start recounting some of my tales of the things that we all as military folks, and especially bomb techs, do, and people would look at me either as I was some kind of liar, because there's no way that you provided Secret Service support for President Reagan. Come on, no way. Or laid in the Pope's bed. But it was true. And they'd look at me like either I was a liar or some kind of freak, because I'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan, and my current boss, and I've got a great gig right now, and I really like it, but she actually said to me a few weeks ago that I'm the only person she knows who's actually killed somebody. And I said, well, gosh, I hate to disappoint you, but it never came up. Didn't have to. And by the way, my job wasn't to kill people. It was to prevent death and dismemberment. But anyway, that part of your identity, you have to figure out how to find a new one, and we all do. Life is full of different phases of your identity, because your life changes over time, and you have different phases. Even in your military time, you go from being, I love using Mario as an example, because you look at Mario as a young troop there at Minot, where he was constantly standing on the imaginary red feet in front of my desk because he was doing all sorts of stupid shit. To to the wizened old master sergeant who was probably correcting the young knuckleheads at his place there at McGuire. So those are different identities, and not just my identity changed a lot when I retired. Finding the right things to say to people without them looking at me like a liar or a freak, and also my desire to care what other people thought, because something else that I learned from being a bomb tech was we can be very arrogant and dismissive of others. Denise used to get mad at me because we'd be at a Armed Forces Recreation Center or something, and the person in the campsite next to me would ask what I did, and I'd tell him I was an EOD guy, and he'd go, "Oh, okay, I'm a cop," and I would just stop talking to him and walk away. It's not good, but that was my identity, right? And the identity that we also need to consider, or identities, is our families, because as I mentioned, Denise, when I retired, she didn't want me to retire. She wanted me to stay in, but it was time for me to retire. I knew it was time to go, because my the thrill was gone. The corporate Air Force, I'd had about this much. I was done with some of the crap, especially, it was the uniform bullshit that where they didn't want us wearing the ACUs because they wanted us in an airman's uniform. And the one young man that got shot out on patrol, that he was wearing DCUs when his patrol was in ACUs. That affected me. That the Air Force just doesn't give a shit. They're all about image over function, and that was sort of the final straw for me. And I knew that when it was time to go, I had to go, because I wasn't going to be an effective member of the larger team. So for me, it was pretty certain. But my wife, she had an identity as the shop chief's wife, and she did a great job doing all that stuff, taking care of the families, taking care of the other wives, the husbands, with the squadron. We had a couple of active duty officers there at Inserlick that had husbands, and she took care of everybody. And when I retired and we moved here to Richland, I moved into my next identity, right, which is working at the National Lab, but she all of a sudden didn't have one. And it took about 5 years for her to kind of find her niche and to stop being pissed off at me about retiring. And she's still pissed off at me about other stuff, but that comes with the territory. And that identity is something that we need to consider as well. How that impacts your spouse, your kids. Both my boys, their first email addresses were EODKid101 and EODKid102. That is a big part of who they are as well. And so it impacts us all. But that's enough of my blathering, and that's kind of what I said before we started recording.